There was a little piece of news, maybe a big piece of news. It depends on what you think about the situation. Came out in the Observer this morning that the Motor City Machine Guns, Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley, are apparently very close, if not already signed, not to AEW, but to WWE. And frankly, I'm a little surprised by that. Now, when I was there a couple of years ago, I guess it was the Dusty Classic. Alex Shelley was there and he teamed with Kushida, and they were the Time Splitters. However, I was told don't call them the Time Splitters because they didn't own the name, and they were never referred to as the Time Splitters. I was, and still am, a major Kushida fan. Going back to his days in New Japan, I always thought he should have been pushed higher than the junior heavyweight division. But my goodness, when they put the Time Splitters together, and I got to talk about it, someone asked me in my Reddit AMA a couple weeks ago how my fandom evolved when I got into the business, especially working in WWE. And I'll say what I said then when I was with the company, where I'm at now. I'll always be a fan. I'm still a major wrestling fan. I like to watch everything. I like to keep up on everything. Probably to my detriment, I keep up on things too much. Not just because of the show, it's just what I like to do. And I answered that question as, how has your fandom evolved? And I said, I think when I worked at WWE, because it was my job to watch everything. And there were times where it was great to watch everything. My last year and a half there was the best creative they had. Obviously, Vince was gone. That was a big part of it. Made my job easier. But there was some terrible times. I knew how to watch the shows to talk about what I needed to talk about. And by that, I mean I didn't have to be totally locked in, like, okay, got to watch Raw for 3 hours here in the screen room before we do Raw. It wasn't like that. But I will say that when I was working there, the stuff I really liked jumped out more. I was watching everything, but there was stuff I certainly was like, man, I really enjoyed that. Or I can't wait to talk about that. And some of the stuff, I've talked about here on this show, that the Dom Live stuff wasn't doing much for me. I see the numbers it's bringing in. I see the social. It was working. Okay. That is something else I learned about when I was working there, is I watched metrics differently. I watched what was getting over differently. It wasn't about my thought. I got to sell what's on TV. That's my job. As an analyst, as a host, as an on-air talent, whatever you want to call them, my job was to sell the product and talk about it enthusiastically. And sure, there were ways I could talk around bad booking or questionable decisions or all that. That wasn't that hard to do. But that's been one of the toughest things that I think anybody's been trying to figure out about pro wrestling, is when you have these jobs, or you have to be an analyst, or you have to do a talk show like I did. You got to find that gray area, because you can't do what I do here and be completely honest and talk about booking and questionable situations and why didn't they do this and I don't like this, or they should do this. But at the same time, I know it would turn people off if they watched certain shows and I was so in the tank for everything. It needed to have some kind of opinion. I like to introduce things that weren't talked about on the show that could, still push storylines forward. That was important to me, whether it be stats. I like to talk about stats. Hey, this person hasn't lost in this. And it wasn't. It was obvious. You saw it on the shows. It just wouldn't necessarily be brought up on commentary. It happens more often now. There's more leeway to do that. Whether it be Graves or Cole leading the way, they certainly can say more things and put more background information into it. Vince would go like, nobody remembers that. Yeah, everybody does. That's why you promote the network and Peacock. You want people to go watch the old stuff. So why would they forget about it? That line of thinking never made sense to me. Maybe it's because Vince couldn't remember stuff anymore. But that line of thinking never made sense. They're not going to remember that. Then why the hell are we promoting Peacock? Why are we saying then, now, and forever together at the beginning of the show and your show? Why is A&E paying big money to give you to get documentaries and get these profile pieces and these shows? Because you celebrate the history. That is done in such a better way now. You should never shy away from your history. especially when you're promoting people to watch it. Go back and watch our old stuff. The stuff that I know I'm still on the network all the time, hosting best ofs and talking about matches from 5, 10, 15, 25, 30 years ago. That stuff's on all the time, as it should be. I'm going to go be watching old SummerSlams to get ready for SummerSlam, to talk about stuff with you. I know a lot of people are doing that kind of stuff. How many other shows, like we will do here, do reviews of old things? Of course you do. Chef Reactions and I hit it off. He's like, I go to bed with the network on every night. I don't necessarily stay awake for it, but I go to that's what I do. I remember when WWE On Demand first started, and I had Comcast, and I was in college. And every week or so, they would upload the show that like Taz and Joey Styles, or just Taz hosted, where they would basically just show Raw and Nitro from the same week back to back. Oh my God, those were great. That should be a thing still today. I'd put that on. I think they'd always start with Nitro and then go to Raw or vice versa. Oh my, that stuff was fantastic. Promote accordingly. Gets back to my point of how I liked watching things, like to bring up history and like to talk about that. So when Alex Shelley was in NXT with Kushida, yeah, you know what? They're not a random tag team. To a lot of people, they were. I don't expect the NXT audience or the majority of the WWE audience to know who the Motor City Machine Guns were, or know who the Time Splitters were, or even know Alex Shelley was. So I got to paint that picture and connect the dots and fill in the gaps, whatever you want to say. And they didn't keep him around. They didn't keep that team around. I think it would have helped Kushida more. I think it would have been great to have Alex Shelley, someone whose experience was giving as Alex Shelley is. Not the case. And Alex went and, I know he did some stuff. He had a shoot job. He had a real job outside of wrestling. Not that wrestling's not a real job. He had a different job. And they back in TNA and all that, and they were X Division champ and all that stuff. That was all great. And they made one appearance in AEW. They were backing up Jay Lethal. They went up against maybe was it the Bucks and maybe Hangman or Kenny. Anyway, but no real appearance. And then it sounded like the last couple of months that they were available. They were out of the TNA contract. And it might have coincided with Scott D'Amore being gone and changing ownership, and who knows about saving money or any of that stuff like that. But I think it was the easy call to think, well, they're going to AEW. And they've made some indie shots and all that. And there's been some WWE rumors that have popped up. Well, in today's Observer, according to Meltzer, they're signed. And I think Sean Ross Sapp said something similar, that all indications are they're heading in that way. Thank you, Tom. FTR and Wardlow against Lethal and the Machine Guns. So there was no Bucks match. There you go. So they never did it in AEW. They never did an AEW. Hey, this is Matt Camp. Thanks for checking out one of our recent clips from the Wrestling Mat. Why is someone so close to The Rock kind of throwing Cody under the bus?
Yeah, a lot of people won't engage with Jim Cornette. I did, just because I have a mark for Jim Cornette.
Please subscribe right now. Hit the like and turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing. And I think you should listen to your TV partners. Let me tell you about WWE and a little insight. More subscribers means more content. And make sure you follow us on social media at WrestlingMat23 on both Twitter and Instagram.